You're listening to LVB Podcast Show with your friend, advocate, and host, Alvaro.
Hello and welcome to LVB SHOW. My name is Alvaro and I'm very happy to be with you tonight. Before I introduce our guest, I want to say thank you so much to people listening from the United States, from Canada, from Australia. We have a lot of listeners lately in Australia, I have to say, in Asia, in Africa, in Europe, and in Latin America. Before I go any further, remember that you can follow me on Twitter at LowVisionBureau, and you can email me at lowvisionbureau@gmail.com if you want to be on the show. So tonight we have someone who is from Colombia, but he lives, works, and even has a company in Australia. His name is Santiago Velasquez. I have to say that I was very impressed with him when I was lucky enough to listen to a conference, a TED talk that he did. He's going to talk about that and so many other things. He has a visual impairment, but that has never stopped him from achieving his dreams. So, Santiago, thank you so much for being on the show. I know how busy you are, my friend.
Hi, Alvaro. Not at all. Thank you very much for the invitation, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. And thanks for the wonderful introduction. That's that means a lot.
You deserve it, my friend. And the first question I have for you, Santiago, is what is the cause of your visual impairment?
So, for me, I was born with a vision impairment. I have glaucoma and scleral cornea on my right eye. So that gives me about 2 to 3% of vision. I can see colors, shapes, and large objects that are close to myself. No vision in the left eye. I have microphthalmia there. But my understanding is that, when I was in the womb and when my body was being formed by nature, the eyes just got the bad deal because DNA said, you know what, we're just going to skip doing this, right? And, well, I got low vision. But it has been like that since I was born.
Now, can you tell us briefly a little bit about your life?
Yeah, so you are correct. I was born, and I am from Colombia. I was born in a small town that, if listeners are not from Colombia, they may not know, but it's called Armenia, and it's in the state of El Quindío. That's sort of located to the southwest of Colombia, and it's in the coffee region. And for the first 12 years of my life, I lived in Colombia. I went to a regular school, nothing different than the schools that other kids my age would go to. And I was fortunate at the age of 12 because my mother has had sisters and brothers here in Australia for the past 45 plus years. They moved here way back when, and ever since I was born, they told my parents, well, you guys should consider moving to Australia. You guys should look for a better future. There is a good one here for your kids, especially for Santiago. And mum and dad did. Dad at the time was he was taking a gap year, just figuring out what he wanted to do after working for 7 years in a particular field. And they chose Australia. And for the past 11 years, my family and I, we've been living here, and I finished my high school in Australia. I started my uni degree here in Australia. And in addition to that, we obviously had to overcome a few challenges with the immigration department due to my vision, overcome a few challenges with my studies because I decided to pick electrical engineering, and when you're blind, that creates its own problems. But in a roundabout way, that's a very brief summary of my life.
Very, very interesting, Santiago, and I would like to know how has been study something like electrical engineering that sounds very complicated, having a visual impairment. What kind of obstacles have you faced?
Well, it's quite difficult because when I was a kid, I have always loved electronics, but I didn't consider what it meant to study high-level mathematics. I never considered what is required to do all of the electronics and all of the design and all of the sort of applications of it. When I got to uni, it was a bit of a weird decision because they have never had anybody who has studied electrical engineering in the past with a vision impairment. And to them, the only questions that they asked me at the beginning was, have you done high-level mathematics in high school? And I did. Have you done physics? I did. And in high school, those subjects, they were difficult, but we figured out a way in which they could work because we had a curriculum that we could follow. We could make Braille diagrams in advance, way in advance. We can print the textbooks in Braille or in a computerized form, and we had a lot of time to prepare. Uni is a bit different, and at the time they said, well, have you done those subjects? Yes, great, cool, we can do that. Very quickly, though, we realized that that wasn't enough because uni is a very dynamic place. Universities do things on the fly, and we didn't really know how to prepare because the content was very high in terms of mathematics, very high in terms of electronics, very high in terms of design, and the people in the section that deals with disability and converting documents, they have never had anybody who pursued such a degree with a vision impairment. So we basically had to sit down and say, hey, listen, I'm going to have to teach you guys about vision impairment and about what has worked for me in the past. And I'm going to have to teach you that so that you can teach me something that I don't know yet, but so that you can teach me that. And at the beginning it was very difficult because we didn't know what should be converted into Braille, and we didn't know how much time we had. And each subject is very different because some subjects are just coding, so that's perfectly reasonable. Some subjects are pure mathematics. That presents its own challenges because mathematicians love writing things in paper rather than in electronic form. Some other subjects require you to build and test pieces of electronic equipment, play with amplifiers, play with resistors, capacitors, requires soldering, and so on and so forth. And again, each one is different. So when we think, oh yeah, we got it sorted out for the next semester, and we learned very quickly, it's like, no, you have no idea what you're going to do in the next semester. You just need to rely on what you have learned in the past and hope that that's going to work for this semester, but you need to be very quickly on your feet. And thankfully, there have been a couple of PhD students that have helped in the process of converting and making units accessible and working with me. So they support me and they help the people who convert the documents and who provide resources. And so far, I have enjoyed it very much. I'm still enjoying it. It's difficult, but it's something that if you're passionate and if you're interested in it, I totally recommend.
Wow, that's powerful. It really, as the career must be. So I think our listeners have now more knowledge about what you are studying and what it takes. And I fully say, Santiago, that you have to go and follow your dreams and follow your passion, right? No matter how difficult it seems.
Oh, 100%. There are situations where people think, no, I'm just going to study this because that's good enough and I'll be somewhat happy. Follow your dreams. Follow your passions. They are your dreams and they are your passions for a reason. You like them. You think they're cool. You think you can get places that you want to get to. And, when I started this career, when I started my university studies, a lot of people say, no, maybe you shouldn't do that. I'm not going to say it wasn't, oh, well, I just show up to uni and I'll pick my degree and that was that. No. A lot of people in high school, my teachers, a lot of people at uni said, oh, but we have never dealt with somebody with a vision impairment. Maybe you should do something else instead. Just think of whatever other than. And it was great to be able to say, oh, hell no, I'm doing this. And I will admit, a little part of me was thinking, if I don't succeed, I'm going to learn something from it. If it turns out that I can't do it for whatever reason, I'm going to learn something out of it anyway. But I can't just say, well, they told me to, so I'm going to do and follow what other people tell me. I'm going to follow my dreams, even if they're hard.
Now, going back to the TED talk that you gave that I listened to, there was a point you made that I had to share with people, and it was when you said, quote unquote, a person with a visual impairment always solves problems. And I would like to hear why you said that.
We live in a world that has not and is still not designed to be accessible. So in every facet of society, there is very little accessibility in mind. And I'm talking about everything. I'm not just talking about building design. I'm not just talking about digital design. I'm not talking about legislation. I'm talking about everything, right? So for little things such as, say, pouring water that most people don't even think about. They just think, oh yeah, just get a jug or open the tab and fill up a glass of water. We can't just fill it up, right? You can't just look at the glass and say, all right, that's as much water as I would like. I'm going to stop there. It's a minor problem, and most vision impaired individuals have mastered it, but you generally tend to put your finger inside the glass, and when you feel the water, you stop. Right. But that's for cold water. You can't do that for hot water, right? So you can't put your finger inside the hot the glass, because then, well, you burnt, and well, that hurts. So in that tiny scenario, most people think, oh yeah, filling up a glass of water, yeah, that's no problem. No. But for us, we're solving a problem. And when it's hot water, you hear the water rise because it makes a different noise, and it makes a different noise as it gets fuller. You feel the cup and you feel how the heat rises, and each person has a different way of tackling other things. And you can use assistive tech devices that might beep and but when we put somebody in a world that was not designed to be accessible, and you ask them, find a lift in a building, or pick the right floor where you want to go in that building, figure out a route to get from point A to point B without any assistance, submit or complete a PDF form, study for XYZ. Because the world has not, or was not, and it's still not accessible, then we have to solve it. That's a problem. That's a big problem. And that is what I'm sort of talking about. We have great problem-solving skills because we're always solving problems, even if it's just at home pouring water.
That's a great analogy, and I agree with you all the way. and I have to say, Santiago, for our listeners, many people come to me for solutions to problems and for ideas as well. So I have to agree with you, Santiago. And everybody in our community has that capability. Maybe it's sleeping right now, but you can awake them for sure. And Santiago, something that I think is fascinating for many people is the fact that you are an immigrant in Australia from another country, from Colombia. I would like to know your opinion on how was that process for someone with a visual impairment, and how is Australian society for people with our problems?
Well, I'm going to break this answer into two parts because the short answer is Australia is a great country for people with a vision impairment. And it's not perfect, but it's a great society. The long answer, though, is immigrating to any country from any country. I want to make that clear. From any country to any country, be it a first world, a developed nation, or a developing nation, to any other country, independent of whether it's developing or developed, sucks. Absolutely sucks for people who have any sort of disability. And that's putting it politely. Because most countries around the world, and I do research in this every now and then, not as a full-time job, but because I'm interested. We are, when you apply for a visa to any country other than a tourist visa, you are looked at, people look at your medical and so on and so forth. And they see a medical burden. They analyze somebody with a disability with medics in mind. They don't analyze it with the social aspect in mind. So, speaking about my particular situation, if you had told my parents and myself and my brother that it was going to take 10 years for us to get our residency, we would have said, you know what, we'll figure things out here in Colombia, because it has been an absolute nightmare. Wow. We arrived in Australia in March the 5th, 2009, and up until then, our idea was Dad is going to study English for a year, 2 years, then he's going to transfer and try to get accreditation for his degree, to get his degree recognized from Colombia, and my brother and I are going to study English. Mum is going to work to help us out, and then she's going to study English after sort of we're stable. And that should have taken 3 years, 4 years tops. 2 weeks after we arrived, actually not even 2 weeks, 1 week after we arrived, the immigration department said, you need to find a school for your kids. And my mum and dad knew that. All good. In Colombia, finding a school for somebody with a vision impairment, at least in the city where I was fairly straightforward. You pick any school that is close to you and that you can afford, and you send your kids there. That's it. You don't consider whether the school has any education resources specifically for people with vision impairment, because sadly we just don't have that everywhere. Right. You just go there, and your kid goes there, and you work with the teachers, and the teachers work with you. So we thought it was fairly similar. We thought, pick a school that is close to where we're planning to live, where it's a good suburb, and that's it. You send them there, and you work with the teachers, and your kid will figure it out, and you will help your kid, and the teachers will help your kid, but that's it. It wasn't like that here in Australia. Here in Australia, and in other developed nations, they have schools that have particular resources dedicated to helping people with disabilities. I think that's great. That's cool. So when we found the first school, they didn't tell us that. So we went as far as buying uniforms. We went as far as showing up for my first day of class, and then they pull us, the principal and his staff pulled us into a meeting, and they said, listen, we're so sorry. We can't take your kid, he's blind, we can't assist him in the right way. That was hard. We thought, no worries, okay, that sucked, but we'll find a school. We found the right school with the right resources, or so we thought, but because we weren't residents and we weren't born in Australia, they said, no problem, that's fine, your kid can go there, but for 6 months of study, 6 months. I want to put this out. 6 months of study in grade 7. They said, sure, you just need to pay us an extra $32,000 so that your kid can study 6 months of his last year of primary school education in Australia. So primary school here finishes in grade 7, or used to. It's grade 6 now. And we thought, first of all, we don't have that kind of money. Second of all, what the hell is it exactly that you plan to do with $32,000? Because not even a uni degree costs that much here as an international student for 6 months. We just didn't have that money anyway. So no matter what argument they presented, and that kept going. That kept going for the past 10 years, because then the next year of high school they said, yeah, sure, no problem. For the whole year, you just need to pay $40,000. And again, very few degrees, if any, as an international student at university cost you that, let alone in high school.
Wow.
And this was a publicly run school. This wasn't a private school that was an elite of the elite of the elite. No, this was just a publicly run school. Nothing to it.
Wow.
And then we were fortunate because we submitted it to the Human Rights Commissioner, because we thought, just because I'm blind, it doesn't mean I need to be charged through the nose to attend the school.
Yeah.
So what they did is they said, yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, maybe that was a bad idea on us. You can go to school. And my parents did pay fees because we were international students. So they paid the regular fees. And then we thought, okay, that was 2 years. That was very hard. That's it, we are done and over with. Now we're applying for the temporary residency, and then we apply for permanent residency, and then it'll be all well and good. The problem is, and I bring back this to when you immigrate and you have a disability, you're considered under a medical model, not under a social model. Mm-hmm. So then, again, what happened was we updated our medical records, as you do when you apply for new visas. And we said, my parents said, and well, we have always been honest from the get-go, even before coming to Australia. The reason why we came here, and the primary one, is because my son has a vision impairment, and we would like to improve the quality of life for him. And when everything was all said and done, ready to apply for the permanent residency, at the beginning of 2011, they said, yeah, well, we have a bit of a problem with your son. He's blind. He's going to cost the Australian taxpayer around $500,000, and he's going to take away services from current Australian residency. Wow. And we thought, okay, that's not cool. That's not very nice. I'm going to uni. At the time I was going to school. I was getting good grades. I was doing as I was supposed to. I was studying the subjects that, the idea was at the time, and it did, to get me into an engineering degree. And for those years, we had to battle because we needed to prove that I wasn't going to be a burden, and we needed reference letters. We needed my transcripts. And that went on for a really long time. It was saying, hey, listen, I know I'm blind. I'm fully aware of that. And if you need to tell me that, well, I need you to do something else, because I already know that. Tell me something I don't know. But it was that constant battle of saying, I'm aware I'm blind, but I have no interest on staying at home. I have no interest on just I guess, being a burden, for a lack of a better term. I came here to seek a future for myself. And the problem was, every couple of years when we had to renew our medicals to continue the process, my price and how big of a burden I was going to be for the Australian community kept changing. One time it was 1.7 million, another time was 900,000, and you're like, well, my vision hasn't changed. I go to the doctor and I pay for that myself, and I don't really do anything else other than that with any public sort of services with regards to health. Why do you keep changing your mind? I'm the same. I haven't changed. So it was very difficult because it meant that my parents couldn't work in their degrees. My parents couldn't get accredited in Australia to work in the professions they studied in Colombia. It meant that we weren't in Australia because we didn't have permanent residency. We weren't in Colombia because we were physically not there. We had no guarantees whatsoever. So it has been an absolute wonderful experience, and I know it doesn't make sense for me to say that, because other than the immigration process, it has been amazing. I have learnt a lot from moving countries. I have learnt a lot when being in another culture. I have experienced a lot. I have gained a lot of independence by having resources that I may not have had in my city in Colombia. I have had experiences that I may not have had. And my friends, my family, my girlfriend, the people who are around me, the people who work for me, the people who have helped and support the immigration part of it has been, and I'm afraid to say it will continue to be, for people who have any sort of disability in any country across the world. So, should you do it? Yes. But it's just something that it shouldn't be this way. We should move away from from the medical model, and we should move to the social model. We can contribute to society as much as any sighted individual. Disability is just an illusion, is something that was created by people who don't like or appreciate people who are different than themselves. So we're not disabled, it's just people think we are.
That's also very powerful, Santiago. I didn't think it would be so rough, you know.
And that's the top of the iceberg. That's just like the abbreviated version, you know.
I bet. But Santiago, for our listeners, that's the right attitude in life, because that we're going to find obstacles, we will. That's for sure.
Oh yes.
And many.
Yes.
But we have what it takes, and that's what matters at the end. Now, Santiago, something comes to mind, and is there any international association that can defend the rights of people with disabilities when it comes to moving from country to country? And I am asking this because there are so many people, well, I'm one of them, really, that I have worked in the U.S. in the past, and I'm looking to find a job again internationally. And like me, there are many people listening. I have surely one listener from Macedonia in Europe. I have one listener also in another country of Europe. I don't recall what's of the country now. I also have one in Mexico, and people tell me the same. It's very difficult to move to another country. All are obstacles, and there's nobody that understands the situation that we face in our own countries in order to have a productive life and to be independent. Sometimes it's just not possible. As simple as that, you know. And they tell me it's frustrating because who we can talk with, who is going to listen to us? Is there an organization to go for?
You know, I wish I could say there is one, but I don't know. I genuinely don't know, because you said it perfectly just then. We come from countries that may not provide all of the resources, the infrastructure, the legislation that assist us in living a productive, successful, and independent life. And the problem is, as you said, you can't explain it to most people, because most people, when they immigrate, they don't have a disability, so they think, oh, yeah, it's very hard. And I just had to learn a new language and maybe had to work jobs that I didn't used to do in my country, but then I sorted it out. But they don't know what's it like to do it with a disability. And then you can't explain to them, to the people from the other country, hey, listen, in my country, I don't have foot pass, so I can't just go out and use my cane, or sometimes there aren't any traffic lights, and cars and motorbikes and everything zooms by me, and crossing the street is a heck of a challenge. Mm-hmm. The education system, introduce whatever it is, it's very hard to explain. They think, oh, that's so sad, and they're just like, oh, that's not what I want. I don't want you to feel pity for me. I don't want you to feel pity for my country. And the last point to that is, people think that when you emigrate, especially with a disability, you're looking for a home, a TV, a computer, and to be able to chill back at home and leech from a government-supplied pension. People forget that when we emigrate, when we leave our country, independent of where it is, independent of what state it is in, we are facing challenges as an immigrant, as a regular immigrant, and as a person with a disability. And if we're willing to take on those challenges, and if people truly understood what those challenges meant, they would understand that there is no way in hell in which people with disability who would like to immigrate are just going to sit at home and say, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and relax for the rest of my life while other people pay taxes and support me. That's just not the way. When you leave your country seeking a better future, you're not saying, you know what, I'm just going to chill. I'm just going to ignore everything, and as soon as I get it, I'll just be a burden. We don't want that. We just want to be treated the same as everybody else. But the UN has okay, so this is a difficult part, because I would like to say that the UN has a body, but it doesn't. It has a convention in the rights of persons with disabilities, but I can't go to them and say, listen, I'm being discriminated against in this immigration case, because the representatives of those countries who represent those countries at the UN, they haven't changed the immigration model from a medical one to a social one. They haven't done that. So independent of what you say to them, they're like, yeah, but you don't meet with the medical requirements, or you're going to be costly. And you're like, well, okay, so what the hell do I do? So sadly, there's not one. Oh, man.
Boy, this subject is interesting.
It's one that...
The first time I have someone on in almost 11 years or so that I have been doing the show. 11, 10, between 9 and 10, we would say. I'm so carried away. I'm carried away now, Santiago, because the subject is important.
It is.
And I never had someone say it like it is about this particular subject. Obviously, Santiago, some people are a little bit scared of this topic because some people don't even want to share this information. Say, I would like to immigrate, but they say I'm so scared. They don't give me a visa. Like someone in Europe was telling me, they don't even give me a visa. Forget it. They don't even allow me to leave this country. It's super difficult to get a passport. My God, it's so hard, Santiago. And there are so many organizations, quote unquote, serving the blind and people with disabilities in general. But what about this kind of organization? Because let me tell it like it is for our listeners. There is a lot of buzz about people who are in the LGBT community, and they have so many organizations that are cheering for them. And it's great, because everybody deserves this.
Of course.
But I also feel that they have, in many ways, more opportunities than we have. And I think we all should have the same ones. We should be equal. And sometimes I feel that, they are fighting for it, but we are too. We are too. Sometimes we are not heard the same,
The thing... you finish that, but I have something to add because you stumble upon a very important point.
Yeah, my point for our listeners is there should be an organization across this planet, as we have the UN, as we have so many ONGs helping people who are displaced from one country to the other because of war, because of any kind of thing. Something like this where we can go and say, look, I'm looking for a better future. This is what we can do. Is there a way to have like a trial period in a country of your database? Whatever, it may be, I don't know, Japan, it may be whatever, and you can go there under supervision, of course, and you can try your skills for 3 months, and if it works, then you have an opportunity to be hired, and you're going to contribute to that society. But there's nothing like that, which I don't understand, to be honest with you.
Well, the thing is, our world moves in stages, right? So if we sort of look at history, in the 1950s, 1960s, it was the civil rights, right? It was people of color are the same as people who are white. And in the 1950s and 1960s and 80s as well, it was the women's movement. And even before that, it was saying, they're equal too. They are allowed to vote. They can work. They should be able to study.
Right.
And those movements are still ongoing, right? They still haven't fully finished. They still haven't fully been accepted what their message is. But now we're starting with the LGBTQ movement, and it's great. I agree with you. It's one of those things that it's fantastic to give everybody a voice, because everybody's unique. Everybody's different, and nobody gets to judge them. You only get to judge yourself, nobody else. You don't get to judge anybody other than yourself.
Yes.
But we haven't made it to the movement of disability. We haven't made it to that movement. Yes, there are people who have disabilities who have very good positions, be it financially, be it at work, in countries, but we haven't made it to the point where companies and non-for-profits are understanding that, yes, we might be blind, we might be quadriplegic, we might be X, Y, Z, but that doesn't define us. The world that decided has built, the world that the able have built, is what restricts us. But if you leave us marginalized, if you don't involve us in legislation, design and drafting, if you don't involve us in design of products and services, if you don't involve us in other facets, then it isn't going to change. And I'm not saying they should reach out to you and knock on your door and say, hey, would you like to be involved? No. We need to actively say, hey, I would like to be involved. And it isn't going to be easy. I 100% know that. But we haven't made it to that stage, right? And I guess the last point is, non-for-profits who help people with disabilities, independent of which disability that is, they get their funding from the government. They get their funding from private donors. They get their funding from other sources. But sadly, generally, when you start talking about immigration, when you start talking about more sensitive topics like that, other people say, you know what, I don't want my wealth to be associated with that, or I am pulling back funding, or so it comes down to money, and they're like, oh, you know what, no, we want the money, so you know what, we'll drop that particular thing that annoys you, or the government says, no, don't touch that, or leave it alone, because it makes us look bad. So it's just a combination of things, I think, that prevents people who have a disability from pursuing a job, from immigrating to a different country. And that's not even taking into account that people with disabilities, again, we're different. So there will be people with disabilities that are very happy to go up to you, introduce themselves and ask questions, and for you to ask them about their condition, and they'll be happy to share. But there are people who have a disability, who have had different life experiences, that are a bit more shy, and they don't want to be known as the person who has the disability. They want to be left alone. They just want to do a job, and that's it. Or they want to go from point A to point B, and that's it. It's just a whole assortment of things. And honestly, we should tackle them. We should do something about it. It's as simple as that.
Oh boy, it's been a very powerful interview for our listeners. I expected a good interview, but this is much more interesting and important. I have so many things in my mind right now.
You're too kind.
But that's the beauty of what I do. To be honest with you, it's fascinating, and you learn so much. And in these kind of debates, we need to have it in our community more and more and more, you know. In Santiago, you have your own company now. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So I have a company called Eyesight, and Eyesight began because of a problem that I was facing, and it turns out that people who have a vision impairment are facing said problem. And we're focusing on providing accessibility to graphical content, digital graphical content in real time. And this is anything from a Google map, from a chart of data for uni, for school, for whatever, or just understanding pictures and, graphical content that appears online in your computer. The problem that I was having was at uni, things move very quickly, and I need to have access to diagrams for circuit designs, or, schematics for the correct term. I need to have access to graphs when I want to go travel and maybe want to understand a sector, Google Maps, and so on and so forth. But there wasn't any way of doing that without printing it and being expensive and taking some time. So I thought, we have displays that help people who can see, and they render colors, they render shapes, and they render text and basically anything. Why don't we have displays that can render tactile information as well as braille in a big canvas that do the same for people who have a vision impairment using the sense of touch? So for the past few years, we've been working on building such a display, and we have a prototype at the moment that allows you to feel what you're seeing. So a map, you can feel the road and the path that you're supposed to follow. A number, a keypad, you can render that. And again, it's very early stage. We're still very far away from the final solution. But the company started with the goal of solving a problem with the for the vision impaired community, but in such a way that it's useful for other markets, so that for us it doesn't become an expensive product that is just a niche product, and it's like, well, that's cool, but too bad. And another subsection of that is another project that I'm working on, which is to do with public transport. And if you live in any nation, independent of whether it's developed or non-developed, when you're waiting for public transport, the accessibility is hit or miss, right? So you have everything from driver training. Drivers might be rude. They might forget that you're boarding. They might not understand your cane or your guide dog, all the way to reading timetables and knowing when your bus is going to arrive, and so on and so forth. And I get tired of that. I get tired of being left behind at a bus stop because I couldn't see a bus coming and I couldn't see it to hail it. So with a team, we decided, you know what? Let's build a system that ensures that I'm going to get in the right bus, and I'm not going to be left behind, and I'm going to get off at the right stop, and I'm not going to be left behind. I wish I could talk more about that system, but we're still not there yet. We're still working, and due to some non-disclosure agreements and such, I can't. But Suffice it to say, we do have a system, and we're looking for partners to help us bring it forward, and we plan to do a trial of it later this year in a city that will be announced hopefully soon. But the idea is, again, to develop a system that helps us as a community, but something that, again, can help other people in the broader community such that it benefits them and it decreases the price for us and it decreases the entry barrier for the developers and so on and so forth. So those are sort of the two major projects that I'm working on. And yeah, I've been enjoying them very much.
How great. Very interesting projects, I have to say, for our listeners. And a person as busy as you, I have a question that I think is important for our listeners, and it's about how to organize your schedule, your life. A busy person like you, how do you do that?
Honestly, it's this is going to sound very non-technical and this is going to be one of my short answers. Just a calendar. And okay. Just be strict with yourself. You know, you're the only one who can set goals for you. You're the only one who can question your goals and question what you do and what you don't do and where you want to get to. And I know, again, it's a very simple answer because I just say, hey, I have a meeting here, I have a meeting there. I would like to meet with my girlfriend then. I would like to do this with my friends. I have these goals for work. But just put things down either in paper or in the computer. Set calendars, set reminders, and set goals. Like, don't be afraid to say, you know what, I want to do this by that time, or I want to talk to that person. That's what I do, basically. Other than that, is just running around like a crazy maniac, trying to stay on top of things. But I think another important thing, which I nearly forgot, was don't be afraid to say no to. When people say, oh, we should go out, or oh, we should do this, you're like, everybody wants to say yes. You don't have to. People will understand if you say no. People aren't going to get mad at you. It's like, oh my God, what a terrible, terrible person. No. So set goals. Don't be afraid to say no, and just understand your priorities. And a calendar is really good. It's a really good best friend. He doesn't talk back, but it's a good friend.
For now, it doesn't talk. Soon it will talk. But with technology, you never know.
Oh, you never know. Yeah, you can get a personal assistant that just rambles on and on and on for the whole day.
Right. And speaking of which, what kind of technology do you use?
So I use not a lot, actually. So I use an iPhone, just a regular iPhone for my phone usage. So that's just to do basic stuff, send emails, reply to things, phone calls, listening to YouTube music, and so on and so forth. And a MacBook Pro, and a 15-inch MacBook Pro from 2015. It's been reliable, it works. On top of that, honestly, I don't use any other assistive tech that is as famous. I have a guide dog, but he's not assistive tech. He's a great companion. And other than that is just problem solving 101. I use VoiceOver on the computer. I use VoiceOver on the iPhone. I use JAWS or Narrator in Windows when I boot into Windows. I use a bit of Orca when I do work in Ubuntu, and I read Braille whenever I can and whenever it's feasible. I use tactile diagrams for my course still, because we still have to print them. With the display, we're not there yet. And just little hacks, little dots and sticky tape around the house to symbolize things and mark things, and that's probably about as much as I use. Nothing crazy. I'm afraid I don't have any new app that everybody should look at, or any new project that I discovered that's like, oh my God, it's great.
Now, Santiago, in our community, many people do not exercise a lot. Do you have any comment about exercising?
Yes. I think we should. When we exercise on top of eating healthy, we have more energy. At least I do. I feel more refreshed. I feel more comfortable. I feel like I can go for longer. I personally haven't done it in a while because I've been a bit life has been a bit crazy, among other things. But I used to swim, and I enjoy that very, very much. I used to hike a long time ago, and that was with a group, so had some assistance. But I think exercise is very important. I think it allows you to clear your mind. I think it makes you feel good about yourself for some people. And for me, I think the best part out of it is it just gives you energy. It makes your body work a bit better. But my suggestion is don't stick to what people say, oh, you should go to the gym. No. You can do dancing. You can do running if you have a guide. You can do swimming if you like the pool. Don't be afraid to try new things. Even if somebody hasn't tried it, hey, if you're interested in it, figure out if somebody's able to give you a hand at the beginning and see if it works. But I think it's a very worthwhile commitment to do exercise.
Now, my two final questions, my something that I have been thinking since I got to watch your presentation is your story is very encouraging and inspiring for people listening right now, and they may be thinking, okay, he's achieving a lot. I mean, his own company, he's a successful immigrant into Australia, he's succeeding in studying what he wanted to do, no matter how difficult it may seem. He has a good life, he has a girlfriend, he has a guide dog, etc. And people may be thinking, okay, I don't have a job, I don't have a partner in life, I'm not immigrating anywhere, I'm not doing much at all. What should I do to start changing that, Santiago? What can you tell us?
Well, I will admit at the beginning, it's difficult. It's difficult to push yourself out of your comfort zone and to do something other than what you have been doing. There isn't a one-size solution. I wish I could tell you, hey, if you do this, your life will be solved. No. But one thing, and not to push it too long, is because people have different experiences when they grow up. Everybody's different, so everybody will be different as to what they're interested in, how much they're willing to be vocal about it. In our society, 90%, or again, I'm just making this number up, but a lot of the time it says, oh, if you have a disability, you can't go out, you can't date, you can't ask girls out, you can't ask guys out because, oh my God, they wouldn't like you. Right. You're not good for working because you have a disability, blah, blah, blah. Don't be afraid to ask. Honestly, I think that's the only thing that has worked for me. And setting goals, even if they're small, it doesn't matter how small, but don't be afraid to ask. You will get many no's, and they will be demoralizing, and you think, holy crap, what the hell am I doing? But eventually, you will get a yes, right? Eventually, you will get, oh yeah, we will hire you. Oh yeah, I'll go out with you. Oh yeah, we'll try that you want to study. And, it's up to you to take your life into your own hands. And again, I'm giving this advice in the general sense because I don't know everybody's circumstances. I don't know what people have been through. I can only speak from my sort of perspective. But I think that for me, the thing that has worked the most has been ask. And the support that I have received from my family, my friends, my extended acquaintances has been immense. People have said, oh, just give it a go. And I know that sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes people don't do that. Sometimes people say, no, you stay at home. We'll sort yourself out. Oh, you stay at home. We'll figure something out. try to say, no, I'm going to do this, and that. Even if it's just a small thing, even if it's just washing the dishes, even if it's just folding your clothes, basic things like that, and build up from that. And don't be afraid to be rejected. Don't be afraid that people are going to talk about your vision impairment. And this is another advice that I'll just throw in the mix. If people are genuinely, and I emphasize that word a lot, genuinely asking about your disability, don't feel afraid to share. Don't feel afraid to share your experiences, because it helps them understand you for who you are. If they're mocking you, I say have fun with that. I love when people mock me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally blind. Tell me something I don't know. Do as you please, but don't feel afraid to share things with other people.
And I have to add to that, Santiago, for our listeners, have a sense of humor.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Otherwise, life is too boring. If you don't have a sense of humor, you're just a robot. And I love robots. I love playing with them, but oh man, they're boring as hell.
Right. So for our listeners, this is Santiago, and he's from Colombia. I'm very proud to say that, to be honest with you, because he's very inspiring for everybody. And my two last questions. My one would be, what are your final thoughts about this interview, Santiago? How do you feel about what we have discussed? I don't know, anything you want to share with our listeners?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you, Alvaro, for taking the time to have me on your show. It means a lot, and it's very nice to have an open and candid discussion with somebody who understands bits and pieces about what I've been through, what I'm going through, and for everybody else, I think sort of closing points, for a lack of a better term, is do as you wish. You are the captain of your own life. Yes, there are things around you that you may not have control over, but hey, if you fail, learn from those experiences. If you don't, well, you must be doing something right. And again, I am active in social media somewhat. Well, not really, but if people want to keep in touch, I use LinkedIn and Twitter a fair bit. And I'm happy for people to reach out and then say, hey, how you going? And I'm always interested in learning more about what other people have been through and their experiences, and hearing stories. Doesn't matter what about. But again, Alvaro, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I would like to thank you very much for the invitation.
It's been my pleasure, Santiago. And for our listeners, remember always to smile. And that's it for now. If you want to be on the show, remember to email me at lowvisionbureau@gmail.com. So this is Alvaro, very inspired today by Santiago and his wonderful and powerful story. So this is Alvaro from LVB SHOW saying good night.